So we're very excited today to welcome Sacha Stone. And Sacha is a Rhodesia-Zimbabwe-born activist, former rock musician, and outspoken advocate for human rights and natural justice. With a career spanning decades, Sacha has founded various initiatives, including the International Tribunal for Natural Justice and the Lazarus Initiative, aimed at addressing pressing global issues such as human trafficking and cultural suppression. He is also the host of the bi-weekly news broadcast Arise Guerrilla News and is known for his groundbreaking work on 5G technology and environmental sustainability. Sacha's tireless efforts have earned him international recognition as a leading voice for positive change. Beyond his media ventures, Sacha is a tireless advocate for peace and education, leveraging his platform to lobby against human rights abuses worldwide and advocate for the protection of pioneering innovators, scientists, and doctors. Currently, he is spearheading the development of the NewEarth Sanctuary alongside Lake Bacalar in Mexico, a groundbreaking initiative poised to redefine our relationship with the environment. Not one to rest on his laurels, Sacha is also collaborating with high-ranking military figures and inventors in Romania to advance zero-point technology as the blueprint for a new Earth. Through these ambitious endeavors, Sacha continues to push the boundaries of what's possible, inspiring others to join him in building a more just, equitable, and sustainable world. And I want to also add that Sacha is a friend of Simon and mine. We met quite a few times in the past when Sacha's been in the UK. Sacha, it's lovely to see you today, and we're all really excited about your talk on sovereign expression. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Becky. It's lovely to see you again. It's been all too long. So I confess I've been away from the United Kingdom for some time, but I'm returning there in 1 month today. I'll be touring England, Scotland, Wales, Cornwall, Ireland, all the different parts in those climes, and greatly looking forward to it. So friends, another confessional here. I've been hammering it, traveling. I've just finished a social tour in the United States. I was in Mexico 3 days ago, Turkey 2 days ago. I've just arrived yesterday in Romania, in Bucharest, and I'm here for only 48 hours. Then I'm shooting out again to Portugal. So I'm a little bit jet lagged. I don't know what time it is. I don't know what day it is, and I'm not really prepared, except to say that sovereignty and sovereign jurisdiction is, as I said to the beautiful organizers here a little earlier, is my shtick. It's what matters the most to me. It's what I care about the most. So I don't need to be prepared for something like this. But what I thought I might do, by way of creating a, if somewhat nebulous framing of sovereignty as I see it. What is sovereignty? What is jurisdiction? What is the flame of the I am? I want to speak to this subject from a multiplicity of angles, and to that end, what I thought I would do was share a few slides that are an extract or an excerpt from the 3-hour lecture that I'm currently touring steadily around the world giving. So it's not going to be a 3-hour lecture now, don't worry. It's going to probably be distilled down to about 30 minutes, and then open the floor for questions, or if anyone wants to throw a rock at my head whilst I'm going through these initial slides, please feel free to do that as well. But what I'll do is share my screen. Stand by. There we go. And I believe this is how I do it. So tell me that you can all see that okay. Are you seeing my screen all right? Okay, I'm looking to Becky to give me the cues. All right, friends, so I'll share full screen here. And again, this is just an extract out of my current tour, and it's my current lecture, which I'm steadily taking around the world this year. And it is really connected to the resurrection of the angelic template, because that for me is what sovereignty speaks to, what reclamation, restoration of human mRNA, DNA speaks to the same subject. The eradication of contrast or shadow or the kingdom of the devil or the parent corporation or the Vatican conspiracy, all of that stuff also speaks to the same subject, which is how do we, in the perfect geometry of now, establish our full jurisdiction, and in so doing, enable ourselves to transmute and transcend the status quo into a higher octave of expression. And so let's start at the beginning, shall we? Which is curious enough to say, let's start at the end, because what you're looking at here is the end. This is the end game that you're looking at. When you're looking at 500 years of blood cult, of stolen jewels and ermine and heraldry and symbolism and totemism, that all speaks to the sacrifice of innocence, the harvest of humanity. So Cronus, the crown, the state, the status quo, the status quo, the state, the crown, Cronus, the titan that devours its own young. Because that is what the crown does. It's all the crown can do, is to feast off its young. It's foundationally a predatorial, off-world technology that feasts off the angelic. That's you and I. And the crown gives itself the divine right to rule, which ultimately leads to this. This is ultimately what you will see if you dare to defy the Caesars of Rome, the crowns of Europe, the Vatican complex, Washington District of Columbia, and the military might. You ultimately face a line of death, and that is our own fellows, our own sons and fathers and uncles, forming a line with batons, with tasers, with guns, with tanks, and ultimately with thermonuclear warheads. And just ask any Palestinian right now what happens when a thermonuclear warhead is aimed at you. It's utter desecration of life. That's what you get with government, with the crown, with the state. Pure mathematics. Government is third-party intervention. Govern means control, and ment in Latin means mind. So as most of you will know, government simply means mind control. It is third-party intervention. It is ritual Satanism. It's Canaanite ritualism. And what it did, government and religiosity, is it came and stood between the living men and women of the living soil and the living soil itself. So the Aboriginal peoples of the world, the First Nation peoples of the world, the indigenous people of the world, are the ones who have suffered the most in that sense. Certainly, it was about 500 years ago that the Vatican set forth and gave the Portuguese, the Spanish, and the English, and the Dutch, and the Belgians the right to go forth and conquest the world in the name of God, and to genocide and holocaust the black-skinned, brown-skinned, red-skinned, yellow-skinned people of the world. So, be clear, friends, we have a 500-year blood holocaust on our hands. And there is black magic connected to that holocaust. The trauma, the psycho-civilizational, psychocultural trauma is unparalleled and still needs to be unlocked. That is our job. That is what we need to get on with in today's great end of days. Government, by my mathematical reckoning, has given us only two things: the bomb and the virus. One is absolute alpha omega destruction on the outside, externally, and the other one is alpha omega utter destruction on the inside, the virus, at the nano level. That is what government has given us. So the question remains, why do we consistently take the knee to government? Why do we consistently render coin unto Caesar? Why do we continue to offer ourselves and our babes up for sacrifice? That is the only question that you and I should be asking ourselves. Ergo, what is the role that you and I are playing in this insane theater? And the answer comes, we are playing a fulsome role in manifesting, enacting, and enabling the satanic status quo. We are the enablers of the satanic status quo. The Underground Alliance, of course, continues unabated, has done for millennia. It uses iconography and iconoclasticism. It manufactures icons, whether you're talking about Anthony Fauci or his mother, Mother Teresa, or you're talking about Puff Daddy, or you're talking about any of these manufactured icons. They are Luciferian false light matrix icons engineered and manufactured to indenture us, to captivate us, to enchant our attention. What is our attention? Our attention is life force, and the life force that we choose to abdicate and abnegate by placing our attention on false light idols. All entertainment is idolatry in that sense. All politics is idolatry in that sense. All historical icons, Napoleon Bonaparte, Adolf Hitler, Margaret Thatcher, it doesn't matter where you go, it's all idolatry, idolatry, idolatry. The Underground Alliance continues unabated. So this is essentially a Orion, Draco, Reticuli, Sabbatean, Catholic, Masonic agenda. It's led to an existential crisis where every single one of us are brought to the threat of extinction through our mRNA intervention. Okay, that's how serious the game has become. Where did it start and how did it start? In the simplest terms, about 500 years ago in the basement of Queen Elizabeth I, who was about the most fulsome slut that England has ever had. She was not a virgin, not by a long chalk. She was a very loose woman with very loose morals. She was a remarkable icon, to be sure. But the point I'm trying to make is that she was an abject fraud. She was not a virgin queen. And this is where it starts. It's flipping black to white and white to black, and then us being sold a bill of lies, a bill of false goods. But in the basement of Elizabeth I, as of all the black nobility of the day, they had a great deal of gold and coin, and they expended that gold and that coin on bad science, bad engineering. So John Dee in the basement of Queen Elizabeth I, along with her spy master general, Sir Francis Walsingham, Sir Walter Raleigh, and others, were all part, in a sense, of the formation of the Midnight Masons, the thwarting of history. So Queen Elizabeth I, John Dee, conjuring demons into chemistry in the basement of the royal houses, in simple terms, is a direct line to Anthony Fauci and Bill Gates today, okay? More or less. I'm trying to break it down. So the question becomes then, what to do? What lies beyond the petri dish? Because clearly we've been orchestrated, engineered, cultivated, cult programmed to this point where we are rendered using 3 to 4% of our capability, and the rest we are simply harvested into this feedback loop. What lies beyond the petri dish? Well, this is where I suggest it's how you and I begin to tell our own stories once upon a time. What is your story? What's my story? Not the story told to you and not the story sold to you, but what is our true story? What is in your heart of hearts? What is your deepest dream, your greatest imagining? Speak about that. Don't speak about the Kardashians. Don't speak about party politics. Let's stop speaking about any of this stuff that's being spun out onto the satanic screen of life and start telling our stories. It's as simple as that. Once upon a time, ... And imagine if we simply invoked our children to tell their stories every morning, sit on the grass, barefoot, in a circle, and simply speak their stories, their dreams, their imaginings, whatever it is they have to say, let them say it. Stop imprinting them. Stop impressing our Luciferian syntax onto babes. Let's hear their gurgles and their murmurs. Let's stop speaking to them for the first few weeks of their lives. Let's just sing to them and listen to them. Let's invoke their song, which comes straight from the stars. And believe me, they would remember their languages and they'd start to speak their star languages if we simply stopped imprinting them at birth. So redact, rescind, retract, revoke becomes the chorus. That becomes the chorus. Redact, rescind, retract, revoke. The paperwork, entering your name in block black capital letters into forms and signing bits of paper with your signature, only to allow the priest bankers to securitize and monetize your signature by discharging everything you sign against your treasury bond, your birth bond. Stop registering your children to the crown, to the state. Stop filling out the godless forms. You're doing it to yourselves. You're doing it to your babes. Just cease and desist. These are all spells and bonds, and we are willfully engaging them, willfully entering them. So let's speak momentarily about the danger of poets, people who can see beyond the veil, people who can see the truth of things. One of the greatest poets in history, Garcia Lorca, being shot through the heart and still defying his captors. Still defying his captors on that fateful day. Why? Because the authorities, quote unquote, knew that his simple poetry was enough to derail all of their plans of their great orchestrated revolution. One poet has more power than the nation state. Let's speak about resonance and capacitance if we're going to speak about jurisdiction, if we're going to speak about sovereignty, if we're going to speak about freedom. What's this I see? Cathedrals, ancient edifices, many of them with their antennae knocked off. Why? For good reason. Ancient churches and cathedrals and synagogues and mosques are invariably not what you think they are. They are not at all what you've been led to believe that they are. They're capacitors and resonators. Your city grid in 90% of the cities of the world are arcane technologies designed to harvest plasma. On the left, you have a Schumann resonator with labyrinth coil. And on the right, you have the Chartres Cathedral, 13th century floor. They're exactly the same technology. This was known to the ancients. Burning Man, the biggest gangbang festival on the face of the earth, is pure satanic ritualism. It's a harvest technology. And the desecration of man, the Burning Man festival. Think about it. Manhattan on the right is a battery. It's a plasma harvesting technology. The Kaaba in Mecca. The Parthenon in ancient Greece. Edfu Temple, Egypt. It goes on and on and on. Take a cross-section of any cathedral and you'll see lighting dome devices, energy converters, ether toroidal chambers, light reflectors, conversion coils. This is pure technology, friends. And these were not built with men with hammers and chisels. Forget everything you think you know about history. Forget everything you think you know. What's this? Good grief. In the 1800s, electro buses. Really? In Chicago, Philadelphia, Tokyo, London, Vienna, Prague, Rome, New York, all around the world. In the 1800s, we had electro buses with their charging power stations in all of our cities, all of our cities. We had electric public buses and domestic electric charging stations. In the 1800s, friends, that's not last century, it's the century before last century. But you're not told that, therefore it doesn't exist in your mind. You're not taught that, and that's because the petrodollar Sabbateans derailed all education in the 1950s, when the Fabianist education universal curriculum was installed, courtesy of the British Empire, franchised all around the world, bleached out our real understanding of our accomplishments, of who we were and what we were. This is United Nations, the art of failure, I call this. This was my hacking enterprise into the basement of the United Nations. As some of you know, I became a director general there in the intergovernmental arena for energy, technology. And at that time, I was trying to bring free energy technologies into the marketplace using my diplomatic status. Well, that didn't go too well. That's me and Dr. David Martin on the right there. I drafted David in to head up the economic policy unit. We were trying to get governments of the world to step into a whole new golden age of quantum solutions. We had the technologies. This is 14 years ago. We'd already galvanized the technologies that could have changed the world. We had technologies that could phase conjugate the depleted uranium out of Fukushima and Chernobyl in less than 10 minutes. 10 minutes. We could remediate the ethers. We had systems that could power up the entire planet on 0 point and bring the world in one generation into a prosperity economy where everyone lives as kings and queens in the world. No want, no war, no disease, no poverty. I can tell you it almost got us killed. That was how we were dreaming up the initiatives inside my living room in London. And a big story on what happened and why I ended up pulling out. And I'll speak to that story duly, probably with David Martin as well. We'll tell the world about what really happened. All I'm trying to illustrate by those images here is that some of us have tried to hack in to see if the apparatus can be commandeered or reconstituted for humanity. I don't believe it can be. That's my takeaway. I believe we have to start from the ground up. We have to decommission all of this toxic apparatus. What does it all come down to? Well, in my somewhat expert opinion, it comes down to the Tatars versus the Khazars, which is to say Cain versus Abel, which is to say Enki versus Enlil. This is the nature of duality. This is the thematic that runs through duality, through this paradigm, the paradigm from which we're about to transmute and transcend. But breaking down Tatarians, what is Tataria? Tataria is, by and large, the Eurasian continent. When we were powering everything up with free energy technologies 130 years ago, 150 years ago, 200 years ago, 400 years ago, Vladimir Putin, you could ascribe him as a Tatarian. John Trump, Nikola Tesla, the Romanov dynasty in Russia, the noble family of Romanov, who were ousted and massacred in their salon, in their palace, machine gunned to death, that beautiful family, by, well, put it this way, the Crown of England, the Vatican, and Wall Street financed the Bolshevik Revolution, manufactured Trotsky, Karl Marx, and Lenin, and installed that regime, which became the great red peril of today, the threat of Vladimir Putin. We manufactured it. The difference is Putin is an enlightened man and is dismantling the Khazarian agenda as we speak. But the murder of this, the last of the great Tatarian imperial lineages, was down to the coin that your grandparents, my grandparents, rendered unto Caesar unwittingly. Wall Street financed this. And then once they'd done it to Russia, you and I, our grandparents, our ancestors, we franchised that same socialist nonsense onto Maoism. And we manufactured Maoism in China. And today we're told that China's the big threat and Russia's the big threat. No, we manufactured socialism, communism, as a sideshow to our venal capitalism. And so it goes on, and so it goes on, and so it goes on. Look to the Titanic. Look to J.P. Morgan. Understand real history. These are the faces of the priest bankers, the Babylonian class of priest bankers. These are the faces. This is a dying breed. This creature just left this world. This one left the world. Not many Americans know this was arguably the most evil creature that ever existed in the Senate and in Congress. A couple of these creatures still live, just. It's a curious thing, is it not, that the Ukraine emblem happens to be the sigil of Moloch. It's a strange piece of sophistry, that, wouldn't you say? And billions and billions and billions of your tax dollars are inveigled through your criminal racketeering government and sent to the Ukraine, a colossal trillion-dollar money laundering exercise, which has, excuse my language, absolutely fuck all to do with saving anyone's lives. Let's be clear about that. It is an abomination which beggars belief. And these creatures fly around in their private jets. Satanism only recently made a formal religion in the United States. That's what libertarianism, or that's what the liberal intellectual mind, shall I say, has rendered to the world. It's a war on reason. So there's been a fall from grace indeed in our time. The status quo is the fall from grace. It's led to this in our schoolrooms. This is fun, kids. This is great fun. Anything goes. You can be anything you want to be. We're that free. We're that liberated psycho-intellectually that we can become as perverse as our demented imagination will allow us. And that will become the status quo. This is iniquity, friends. This is Sodom and Gomorrah in Technicolor. And it's under our watch. You and I are presiding over this. We are permitting the manufacture and the engineering of this abomination by paying taxes, by rendering coin, by placing attention, by filling out forms. It goes back to this. Not enough time here to explain what this slide represents, but in simple terms, splitting atoms, which is what Oppenheimer and Einstein did at the behest of the Midnight Masons of the 1930s and 40s. And we rent the fabric of time-space by splitting atoms, and that sent hyperdimensional beacons into the ethers, which granted permissions for some very malevolent forces and elements to come into the 3D temporal realm. Contracts and compacts and treaties were entered into by our governments and these deviant, malevolent forces. And that led to the fast tracking of hell on earth that we're witnessing today. So you want to understand 9/11? You want to understand the connection between 9/11 and Waco and the Oklahoma City bombings and Pearl Harbor. Moving on. Some of the stuff that's coming to light today through the grace of God and revelation, and that's me photographing alien mummy skeleton, a private collection, the biggest private collection, I think, in the world, that certainly that we're aware of, that I'm working very, very closely with right now. Very interesting stuff, not least considering there's 3 eggs inside this one mummy. So put it this way, our cosmogenesis and cosmogenetics becomes a very integral question now, and how we move forward in contemplating the past. And in contemplating the past, we're left everywhere with vestiges of the past that we just don't understand. We don't have the intellect to read the oldest astro clock in the world in Prague. We can't actually read it. We're that out of touch. We can't read most of the encryptions in cartography and the old languages that are encoded. We've lost touch with how, what, where, when, and why the golden age existed. Recently, our great-great-great-grandparents were living at the time of the end of that era. This world was fascinating 200, 300, 400 years ago, 500 years ago. Absolutely fascinating 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. The time of the Hindu epics of the Mahabharata, going back many, many thousands of years. We have vestiges around us still, but we can't see them because we're blind to them, because we're too busy ogling pornography or soap opera, daytime television, or Disney, Hollywood, pedo fantasia, mind control. We choose not to see what's staring at us, these edifices, this extraordinary world out there, extraordinary world that's right there. But we don't see it. We can't focus. This is a very good pictorial image of the ancient days as described by the Mahabharata, the Hindu epics, with the Vimana, the flying craft, which we know existed all around the world. We need to remember, we need to rekindle our remembrance, open up our capacitance to receive the echo of history, real history. Everything is encoded around us. It's all there when we stop allowing our faces to be plunged into the pig trough of the status quo, the reductive, mind-numbing, inane stupidity and vapid imagination of today's class of monoculturalized human being that we are all variously becoming. There are stargates and seals and portals everywhere you look in this world, everywhere you look. Everything is electric, everything is alive. Those banks, those municipal buildings are not what you think they are. Those houses of parliament and congressional buildings are not what you think they are. It's all electric architecture. These buildings are were living plasma technologies, able to heal, able to power up cityscapes on cold electricity, on plasma. Revelation, as it pulls us deeper into its exquisite bosom, is reminding us and showing us things, unearthing things all around the world, old manuscripts, old dusty diagrams. We're beginning now to recomposite what we've lost. We're beginning to see the pure genius of the ancients in this world before we became so clever that we became dumbed down to this extent. The technologies, the way we could accelerate enlightenment. We could draw the dielectric universe into the crown of our skulls, energize our bodies into immortality, to live for hundreds, thousands of years. What happened to the giants? They were genetically bred out only 100 odd years ago. The turn of the 20th century, there was still a legion of giants all around the world, in all cultures, all faiths, all around the world. The testaments are there. And about 100 years, they were genetically bred out. And curiously enough, nature is doing what nature always does. It's bringing giants back. Look at the kids today. Go on TikTok and see how many giants, teenagers, 15, 16, 17-year-old giants. Donald Trump's son is such an example. This is a resurrection of the angelic template. You can't suppress things that are in the blueprint of the divine. You cannot. Beyond a certain point, you cannot. So if you choose to remember or not, revelation will be doing the remembering for us. And it's happening. It's underway. It's about to unleash. This year into next year, 2025, it's about to unleash. Marco Polo, why did they not teach us in school that Marco Polo's true accounts of what he saw included dragons, pet dragons, not just one or two, legions of dragons in his age? Why do we never speak about this? Why do the history books not illustrate that? Up until very recently, horned humans still roamed the earth. The Smithsonian Institute, the Vatican Museum, the British Museum, the Vatican Library have all sequestered these discoveries, these findings, these relics. They've spent the last 200 or 300 years hoovering up all of these relics, making sure that they're out of sight. And we've lost touch. We've lost touch with the majesty of our own species. Closing my talk about sovereignty, as some of you will know, in 2015, along with some very noble and very brave colleagues, I founded the International Tribunal for Natural Justice. And 3 years in, we formed the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into Human Trafficking and Child Sex Abuse. I don't know who's doing that, incidentally. That's very curious. Did you see that? Did you see that? That's a very clever hacker hacking in to my computer whilst I'm presenting to your hallowed group. So let's allow the satanic forces to play their games, and we'll just get straight back to it. As I was saying, I'll just share my screen again, friends. We formed this Judicial Commission of Inquiry, as some of you will recall. There we go again. A clever hacker, a Nazi hacker. Well, I will leave it up to you folks, whilst this hacker, whoever it is, continues to play their satanic games. May God have mercy on their soul. May God have mercy on the soul of whichever creature is defiling, attempting to defile and desecrate godly images. God forgive you. And I would invite you, Rebecca, and I would invite all of you to enter into a group prayer for this sad soul.
Sacha, I just want to interject. We've got someone in the chat who's doing a whole load of Zs. We've never, ever, ever had this before. Can someone try and get rid of... Actually, I should be able to do it. I'm not sure.
I'm working on it.
Are you working on this, Angela? We have got someone who has broken into the meeting and is...
Oh, well, why don't we show them? Let's show them, highlight them, for heaven's sake. Who are they? Let's have a look at them.
Let's have a look at them. The writing's in Russian, I think.
Bring them into the light.
I'm trying to look through the group. I mean, yeah. They didn't spoil the talk because we got the most wonderful talk. Thank you so much, Sacha. I know that we've got
a great pleasure.
We've got some fantastic questions, and I know that our viewers, our members, absolutely loved this talk. It's exactly what resonates in their hearts as well. You know, we know it. Right. Shall I start with a question? I'll start with a question.
Well, let me, if I may, not to be put off track by this turgid little Satanist in your midst. Let me just say that the point I'm trying to make with illustrating the International Tribunal for Natural Justice and the Judicial Commission of Inquiry that we did into human trafficking and child sex abuse, number one, and then the weaponization of the biosphere, which we launched in 2019 in Indonesia. That's a classic example of how any one of us can simply take command, take control, and establish our own jurisdiction. We've done that with the International Tribunal. The reason I showed that slide of the Native American Indian grandmother with the circle of fire is because that's the next Judicial Commission of Inquiry, which we're launching in autumn this year, which is the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into the doctrines of discovery. So we'll finally begin to look, and we've started to meet with many of the world's preeminent hereditary leaders. I was just with the Hopi a couple of weeks ago in Arizona, getting their blessing. We've met with the Cherokee, with the Lakota, with the Navajo, with many, many of the First Nation peoples in America. We continue to do it. I've addressed the Alliance of Indigenous Nations Summit recently. We have African, Central, South America, Southeast Asian, Australasian, Aboriginal, First Nation hereditary leaders and chiefs, kings and queens, sultans, rajas, coming forward to give expert testimony on behalf of their peoples. And they'll speak to the truth of what happened to their countries, to their peoples, to their tribes, to their nations over the last 500 years. Not the truth that the British curriculum would have us believe, or the standard academic models of history, which play deftly into the hands of the priest-banker class of Luciferians, not speaking to their version of history, but to the true history of what happened. And that 500 years of blood cult needs to be addressed. The stories need to be told, need to be heard, because we're talking here about redemption. What is redemption? Is it about Zimbabwe, the Zimbabwe money being, is it about the Iraqi dinar? Is that redemption? I don't think so. No, redemption is about resurrection of the ancestral blood song, the releasing of these patterns of trauma that go back thousands of years, to permit thereby the resurrection of the angelic template, which we are all harboring, and which is the true atom seed of the human story and the human so-called mRNA DNA. So I would just say that being bold, having the courage to stand up and to strike and to lean into life, to enact, to embody, and to manifest. That was why we were born. Just like your little satanic friend here, our little these symbols are redolent of a very base, low frequency mind that is positioned somewhere near the anus in terms of the consciousness. So the poor creature is trapped, his mind. The heart doesn't even exist, but the mind is actually positioned right near the sphincter of the anus. And so you have to look at our little Nazi friend with a great deal of compassion in that sense, and invite this kind of cockroach, this kind of insect. You need to invite them into the light, into their own light. But there we have it. I simply want to leave your audience with the message that enacting, embodying, and manifesting is the true preserve of the human. It's why we were born. It's why we're here. So for the love of Christ, for the love of God, for the love of all that is sacred and sacrosanct, let's get off our knees and let's no longer take the knee to anything or anyone that insults the human soul.
Gosh, that's absolutely beautiful. It really is. Going back to the technical side of things, Angela, I'm seeing lots of people who are clearly not members and are, I don't know what, are entering the waiting room. Are they admitting themselves?
No, I turned the waiting room back on, and it's the people that are posting the nonsense are not in the list. I can't find them. They've obviously
so they're not actually here. They are hackers.
Yeah.
Well, there we go. We're obviously on point.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I do have a question now. How's it working, Angela? Do you want to take questions in the chat right here?
I think we can just go back and forth asking Sacha questions, so somebody wanted Sacha to explain what he meant by 0-point technology. And I also wanted to say, before this started, people were responding, Sacha, to what you were saying. It was brilliantly stated.
Okay, so no actual questions from the viewers, because this is being recorded and we just want to keep for GDPR just focused on the three of us. Okay, right. Okay, so I'll ask the question. As we become an active part of this change on a grassroots level, what would you say is the most important first step that we take besides claiming and standing in our sovereignty?
So for me, it's a simple equation. It is, I suggest you turn the chat off because our little penis-obsessed Nazi friend is insisting on sending vicious messages. You'd maybe just turn it off. Thank you. As I keep repeating, my mantra has been for certainly 15 years, if not closer to 20. My mantra has been stop paying personal income taxes. There is no law that requires you to do so. In fact, you are defrauding yourself in so doing. This is well known. Let me just put this little caveat here. 2 weeks ago, midpoint through my US social tour in Atlanta, I had dinner with the #1 tax attorney in the United States. He's a legend. I'm not going to name him here. I had met him 3 years ago when I was with Robert David Steele doing the Arise Resurrection tour, and I'd received a note from some folks asking me if I would meet this gentleman. And we did. And Robert David Steele had, as he told me after that, he said, Sacha, that was the most extraordinary restaurant and the best meal I've ever had in my entire life. I'm 69 years old. I didn't know food like that existed. And it was the most exquisite restaurant that this gentleman took us to. Now, I think he paid well over $1,000 just for the meal. And I'll tell you, that gentleman, that evening at dinner struck me. And I did hang on to his number. And 3 years later, now, I reached out to him and asked if he was available, because I was again traveling through Atlanta. And he was happy to hear from me. And a mutual friend of ours joined us, and we had a dinner 2 weeks ago. And this gentleman, who is known to be the #1 tax attorney in the United States, told me that in a few weeks from now, I think it's 2 months, 8 weeks, something like that, he's going to be releasing a blueprint, a template. He says it's his coup de grace. It's what he's spent his whole life working toward. He'll be releasing a template that will instantaneously allow 2/3 of the American workforce to stop paying personal income taxes for all time. Now, that's the kind of maneuver that's going to free up middle America like that. And he's done it using his overarching understanding of statutory law and all the bullshit ordinances dreamt up by the satanic IRS. So thank God he's coming at it from there. He's investigated all the loopholes and now created a generic template. But it's taken him, wait for it, 30 years as the leading guy. Now, that's how smart the Midnight Masons and Babylonian priests are when they're devising their ordinances and their dirty little tricks to trick us into being bonded wage slaves because of the contracts we enter and the papers we sign. So you see, nothing's being done to us. We are volunteering ourselves up for servitude, for enslavement. And that's the key piece. So the bottom line, Becky, is stop rendering coin unto Caesar simply because Caesar says you owe it to Caesar and because you've been programmed into being afraid of Caesar. Caesar doesn't even exist.
Thank you, Sacha. Over to Angela for a question.
Sure. Sacha, some people were interested when you were talking about the past, like Tartaria and the giants. They want to know what was the reason why, like, the giants were bred out?
So I'm not an expert in this subject. I'm not as studied in it as I could or should be. My understanding loosely is that pre-Diluvian civilizations were vast, going back many epochs. We're talking titans. Without any question of doubt, we're talking about titans. I first was brought into an understanding of this subject matter a couple of years ago by PhDs, scientists, forensic scientists and geologists who contacted my producer, Christy, at the Lazarus Initiative and asked if I would give attention to their findings. And Christy and I had a couple of calls with them for many hours long, and they were showing us satellite imagery and they were showing us mountain ranges all around the world, emphasis Africa and the Middle East and North America. They were showing us the forensic evidences that mountains used to be titans. Many of them used to be arcane creatures, biological creatures, and hominid type creatures, albeit ones that were many kilometers tall, which at a given extinction point collapsed and fell all around the world and then calcified, accreted and calcified into stone, into mountains, into mountain ranges. And the forensic evidences are absolute. Now, I've spent time at places like Devil's Tower in Wyoming. I've spent hard time there looking. I've just been to Grand Canyon a couple of weeks ago, somewhat studying that. I studied the red rocks of Sedona up close and personal a few weeks ago. I'm making a point of going around the world doing so. I was just in Sudan a few months ago in the Nubian desert, studying the pyramids there and studying some of the ancient geology in that part of the world. And I'll be in Peru in a few weeks' time to continue with this investigation of mine. I was in Turkey 6 months ago at the place of Nebuchadnezzar, up in the mountains, in very, very difficult places to get to. I was in Göbekli Tepe, and I was in Karahan Tepe, the oldest discovered civilization in the world. They just unearthed 2 or 3 days before I arrived in the desert. They just unearthed the oldest artifact ever recorded in academic history, and I was there to see it with one archaeologist, my mother, and 2 soldiers with guns who were trying to get us away from witnessing this thing as it was unearthed. And what was it? What was the thing that we saw? It was an effigy of a man clutching his penis with 2 hands, and that was the oldest effigy discovered in academic history, predating everything on record. And it was a classic sorry image of the patriarch clutching his cock with both hands. Well, for me, that was great fun and mirth to see that as we see the resurrection of the eternal mother now, so-called divine feminine, and the end of the patriarchy, that's the effigy that should come to light. Again, revelation, the divine comedy. It couldn't be more perfect. I've probably gone off track somewhat. In any event, the point I'm making is that the ages going back 200 million years, going back anything up to 300 billion years. And again, I'm devastated to see this continuance of this notion that we are 13 to 14 billion years old. It's such patent nonsense. If we're going to play the fiction of time, and please don't ask me what those balloons are because I have no idea. If we're going to play the fiction of time, then let's look at 954 billion years, because that's closer to the mark. And incidentally, I'll be doing a Mediterranean tour with the greatest archaeocosmologist that I know, Dave Emery, in 10th to the 20th of October this year. And in those 10 days, we're moving from Egypt, from Athens in Greece, all the way down to past Turkey to Egypt. And in those 10 days, we're planning on creating a timeline and mapping that 954 billion years for the first time to see what that looks like. What I'm suggesting is that 1/3 back on that 954 billion year timeline, so we're talking about 300 billion years, is more or less the inception point of sentient life in this, as we understand it. So we have been through such a multiplicity of seedings, just as each one of us here have been through limitless incarnations and soul expressions. So has our entire planet been through limitless, numerous, innumerable expressions. And for sure, some of those expressions were titanic, were forests that reached for scores, if not hundreds of kilometers into the ethers. And why not? Very different pressure conditions in those times. And so it goes on. So, one has to see this plane of existence, this earth plane, this Tara. We have to see it as being a limitless holographic field of expression, which gives rise to the imaginings. And as we know now, as you, Becky, and Simon's work attests to more than most, the human is, by distinction, the galactic hybrid. So we have had the seedings in the human so-called mRNA DNA from a multiplicity of star nations and interstellar intelligences, some of which themselves are gargantuan in scope and scale. I'll just finish off by saying that it was taught to me years ago by one of the greatest astronaut scientists that ever lived, Dr. Brian O'Leary, who was the mission leader, astronaut scientist mission leader. I think it was the Apollo 17 mission. I can't remember exactly, but it was the mission that was designated to go to Mars. in the 1970s. As some of you who are old enough to recall, Congress withdrew the budget, but it was going to happen. We hit the moon in 69, right? Okay, so they say. And by 78, 79, we were designating Mars, and that mission to Mars was a big deal at the time. It was being talked up everywhere. And then Congress pulled the budget in 79, I think it was, and that fell flat. Well, Dr. Brian O'Leary was majorly pissed off about that because he was ready to hit it. He was ready to lead the mission to Mars. And then he discovered that there was a secret space program and the one that he was fronting, and he was not best pleased with that. So he went on to become essentially a whistleblower against the deep state, against the secret space program, and against NASA itself, along with other good folks like Richard Hoagland. And Dr. Brian O'Leary, who I knew a number of years before his death with his wife, Meredith, who also recently passed, and I love them both very dearly. But they stayed at my house a couple of times in London, and we had a touching friendship. It was he, Dr. Brian O'Leary, who taught me the truth about the secret space program and showed me evidences when he was staying at my home in London. And the one subject I remember most starkly was when the Japanese space program had reached out to him after the Saturn probe mission, because the live feeds coming through to the command hub of the Japanese space program was the same feed coming through to NASA's Cape Canaveral or wherever it was. And the Japanese were able to see exactly what was coming through the NASA feed because they were jointly financing the Saturn probe mission. And what they see begged belief. And when they saw it, they got the hotline call from NASA saying, do not disclose what you're seeing. You do not let this go public. You must, under no circumstances, let this out to the world. And the Japanese told them to get stuffed and said, we financed this mission. Don't tell us what we can and cannot release. We own this IP. Well, put it this way, things didn't turn out too well for Japan. I'll remind people of Fukushima. I'll remind people of how devastating geoseismic weapons can be. They can tank the economy of a country in 24 hours, okay, and render them bankrupt. So leave that story alone. Just to say this, that what came through on that feed from the Saturn probe mission was alien craft over 200 miles long mining the rings of Saturn. And that was captured and that was witnessed. So what does that tell us? That if we've got alien craft over 200 miles long mining the rings of Saturn, it means that everything is possible and all bets are off. So bottom line is this, Becky, we have got to look at this world, this plane of existence, as a limitless plane of existence that has received and seen and incubated and hosted limitless grand imaginings of the mind of God, up to and including Titans. So the giants simply became the last strain from the Titans all the way down to the hominid. We're adapting at all times to pressure conditions, essentially, to the climate and to a whole host of different cycles and elements that are taking place. In any event, I'll leave it at that.
Sacha, that's so it's so interesting, and it reminds me of the times when we would meet up and you and Simon, the conversations were just fantastic to listen to. So that reminds me of one of the things you said a bit earlier in your talk, that it was when you were working in the diplomatic status, and you said that you were trying to reintroduce free energy. And you talked about how we can't do it with the current, we can't introduce these things with the current systems in place. Can you talk any more to that, or why you did have to change? You said you might, or why you moved on to like your next project.
So So my attempt with the United Nations, again, they had come to me in 2008 and had petitioned me or lobbied me to come into the UN to help sex up their agenda. Now, in 2008, I was not nearly as conversant as I am in recent years about the diabolical nature of the United Nations. I thought that it was pretty bad, that it was an extension of the League of Nations, that of course it was a controlling interest. But I thought that most of the people I'd ever met who'd worked in the UN, who had been a part of it, were good people, good academics, good people, no question about that. So I thought, okay, well, there's a shit show called the United Nations, established by the globalists, but filled with good people trapped in a bad system. So if they're inviting me, good ambassadors are lobbying me to come in and help sex up the agenda, they must be pretty desperate. And if they want a long-haired shock poet, a humanitarian, political activist, and peace diplomat, if they're asking me to come in, that must mean that there is room for my kind of think, my kind of vision. And so I negotiated with my Secretary General that I would come in, but I would not take a salary. I said I did not want any coin. I did not want an office in the UN. I would accept the role of Director General, but I had to have full containment of my portfolio, and that was the basis upon which I agreed to come in. And they knew I was going to bring in with me scientists and academics, because for many years with Humanitat, since 1999, I had already established my foundation as an incredible brain trust, whether it was breakthrough technology or it was a breakthrough law and legal procedures or breakthrough economics modeling or whatever. My intention with Humanitat was full spectrum remedy of this planet. And so I spent years meeting with brain trusts and academics and putting them into our kind of goodwill ambassadorial committees. And so when the UN lobbied me, it was not because they liked the look of my face. It was because they knew I had a repertoire already that I could bring in of heavyweight technicians, academics, scientists, and so on. And so that was the premise upon which I agreed to come into the UN, that I could then come in, use my diplomatic station to now work directly with energy ministers, finance ministers, heads of state, to invite them into new treaties, new multilateral treaties that could bring and defibrillate the planet out of the old agrochemical, petrochemical, petrodollar, globalist blah blah, and bring it into a quantum domain with real solutions to remediate the air, the soil, the water, blah blah blah. And we had the technologies and the academic know-how. So that was the basis upon which I entered. But a year in, or 10, 11 months in to that, it became clear that I had simply been co-opted to keep me off the street, so to speak. And I'd been building a massive summit called the Exemplar Zero Summit, the EZ Summit. And I'd set up an initiative called the Exemplar Zero Initiative with a fund, a big fund called the Exemplar Zero Gift, the EZ Gift, which meant Global Infrastructure Finance Trust. And so David Martin and I brought him in for this very purpose. Let me just quickly share my screen one more time so I can just illustrate the point for you one more time. Stand by. Let me just go back here to the UN pictures. Sorry about this, guys. There we go. So here we have it. So that there on the lower right is the summit we eventually did at the UN Millennium Plaza in New York. That's me on the far left, seated there, David Martin giving the keynote. That Exemplar Zero Summit was financed by my credit card, because 10 days before that, the big summit was supposed to take place in Kuwait City. But they did a dawn raid and arrested my team. I was supposed to be there, but I was in London, thankfully. And it became crystal clear to me, as I pointed out, to the government officials that I spoke to later that same day, which is 10 days before the summit that you're seeing there. They had pulled the rug on my summit in Kuwait City. They had literally allowed me a year to set it up, having heads of state flying in, ministers, finance ministers, a $5 billion fund that I was launching, $1 billion being gifted by each of the Gulf states. And 10 days before the summit in Kuwait City, they did a dawn raid and arrested my team. Really? And they thought I was there. Well, I wasn't there. But what I did, instead of fold my game and run away with my tail between my legs, because I was still Director General, that photograph on the left is me in my living room in London with my creative team. The chairman of the Scandinavian Chamber of Commerce sat there with glasses. I was pulling in my mates to try and help me get back on my feet because I had 10 days to pull off a summit in the UN in New York on my credit card. And the picture above that is my two creative guys with me. It was a horrible time of my life because, again, I'd been set up for a massive fall, as had David. Massive fall. And that's why I call this the art of failure, Trojan horsing around. We were Trojan horses in the UN. We were not horsing around. We were doing serious work in the basement to try and re-rig the game. It backfired horribly. But I learned a great deal at that time. I learned that that we could not, let me put it this way, that old saying, just get your foot in the door. No, you will lose a leg. And what that exercise taught me in life is that despite my hubris could have killed me. My arrogance and hubris could have killed me. And it's because I thought I could play both sides of the equation. I could hack into the system and then I could play on the system. You cannot beat the devil on the devil's chessboard. And if you think you can, sunshine, you'll be dead. And by the grace of God, I'm not dead. And a number of pops have been taken against me, as some of my folks know. And it's all good. I never, ever, subsequent to that time, ever try and get my foot in the door or try to outmaneuver the devil on the devil's chessboard. Now I play God's chess, which is my chess game. I now simply enact, embody, and manifest the kingdom of heaven on earth. But I'm not seeking to build a bridge to the kingdom of the devil because it's utterly toxic. The infrastructure is moot. It's defunct. And we don't want that apparatus anyway. We don't want those old treaties and compacts. And what else is the United Nations if not a bunch of old spells and bonds dreamt up by dead old farts in pinstripe? For God's sake, let's move on. We want to get back into a relationship with the living soil. That's all I'm focused on now with my Bacalar project and now soon to be announced project in the United States, because we're about to unleash a massive project in Tennessee in the United States, which I'm so desperately excited about. I've decided that whilst the rest of the world turns its back on Middle America and hopes that the US dollar tanks, I've decided it's the perfect time to go and stick the NewEarth flag in the heartland of America and circle the wagons and bring our free energy technologies and our age reversal technologies. I'm not going to say anything more than that. And our incredible fellowship and establish a massive project in the heartland of America, which is what I'm about to announce in the next 3 weeks.
Sacha, that's just so fascinating. And I did know a bit about that story, and I'm glad you've shared it. It shows the battle. It shows the journey is not easy. It's not easy fighting for your cause. It's not easy trying to change the status quo. And I'm so glad that you survived that and found your way. You know, there's so many people, people are they're coming into their own and they're trying to make difference. And it is incredibly important to learn from others and to connect like we do here in Connecting Consciousness, because it's a lonely game as well, isn't it? When you're spearheading things and when you know that you've are having to dodge bullets. So thank you so much for sharing that. also very exciting, your project. Tennessee, well, I mean, you'll have clear skies for that now that Tennessee has passed the bill not to have
I know.
chemtrails. So yeah, I hope you have wonderful fair weather for that. We do have a lovely CC group in Tennessee and some lovely, wonderful CC members there as well. Do you want to take any more questions?
I'm very happy to do so if there are any outstanding.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about your the New Haven in Mexico. Is that like a healing center?
Let me, if I may, thank you for that. And yes, let me pull up something for you. Just give me a second, if you will. Okay, I will just cue something up here. Oh, no. No. Okay. I'll just cue. Let me just jump on here. Share screen, share sound. I don't think the sound is going to work because I would have to reboot my computer. But yeah, I'll show you very briefly the Bacalar project, and I'll just speak over it. To those of you who know my work, or my most the thing I'm most passionate about is not Illuminati baiting or throwing rocks at the establishment, much as I enjoy that. My real passion is conjuring and elevating art and beauty and consciousness, because to me, the remedy that we breathe into this world must be at least 51% of the equation of our lives. In my case, I think it's a lot more than 51%. I think I'm probably 20% activist and pissed off human, and I think I'm 80% insane optimist, and only wishing to lean into life. To those of you who know NewEarth Haven in Bali, which has become fairly famous. I built this place about 7 years ago with my wonderful, talented colleagues, and it stands as I'm just scrolling here through the video. It's a very beautiful place. It's a place where we have been experimenting on exactly that, on elevating art, beauty, and consciousness. How do you create a space that is fully bioresonant, bioarchitected, biodynamic, spatially harmonic? What effect does that have on community? What effect does that have on health? This is the last day in Bali. I haven't been home for 2 years. I went home in I think it was January or February this year for about 2 weeks. It's the first time in 2 years I've managed to get home. And this is in my living room with a bunch of beautiful community friends in Bali. We just have created a beautiful space, and it works. And it's a place where we've been experimenting with the elevation of art, beauty, and consciousness. And this is a small petri dish, albeit we receive up to 1,000 people at a time when we do events. The last festival we did, we brought the ancient kingdoms of Southeast Asia together for the first time in their history. 27 kings, sultans, rajas, and kings of kings we brought together. And it was historic, to say the least. This is the kind of thing that you would think the United Nations would be doing things like this. But no, it's left to NewEarth Project to do this, to reinstate the dignity of the hereditary leaders and elders who were thrown off their thrones, who were gazumped by the Jesuits, by the Vatican conspirators, by the crowns of Europe. Now these ancient kings and kingdoms are resurrecting. And yes, that's me being pinned by one of the sultans, but for good reason, because I proudly declare on behalf of these people and resurrection of the true hereditary leaders, paramount chiefs and kings and queens of all nations of the world must take place before they then step back and allow the sons and daughters of God to take preeminence. But you see, this is where history, we need to rewind history somewhat. It's a complicated subject. I'm happy to go into it in great depth. Just to say, the restoration and the resurrection of the ancient hereditary kingdoms and sultanates needs to happen. The parent corporation needs to be dismissed. The central globalist government needs to be dismissed. And we need to rekindle the mystical traditions, the ancient traditions, which were bleached out, expunged from the world by the corporation. And that's why this is New Earth Haven. We do things like this, cultural events and so on. Bioarchitecture is something which we've done a great deal of work on and experimented over the years. This is some of our experimentation. How to reinstill a plasma into our bodies. How to extend life by knowing how to build and create the correct built environment, which immediately heals the body and the mind and the soul. This is ancient art, ancient craft, ancient science, and we're resurrecting it. This is ancient Tatarian technology that we're bringing back in the New Earth Project. And what we're building in Tennessee, what we're building in Bacalar Laguna in Mexico, is a resurrection of the golden age at the mathematical level in order to refuse, reignite our true format, DNA format, cellular format, atomic format. So it's a serious subject. It's not just aesthetics. Aesthetics is a part of it. And this is the Bacalar project in simple terms. Let me see if I can just scroll you through some of this. One of the most beautiful places in the world, the Bacalar Laguna. And this is some of the bioarchitecture which we've developed, which is a very innovative and unique form of plasma charged, dielectric and paramagnetic charged housing, which we are beginning right now, building out the development. It's a very, very exciting project. Very exciting. This is our own very innovative look and feel. But it's a zero-point economy that we're building. Within 3 years, we intend to have a zero-point economy. It's the Temple of Unity Consciousness, which it's got a huge glass dome on top there, but that will be epicenter of both Tennessee in the United States and of the Bacalar project. Ecological condominiums as well. We're facilitating all budgets for people to be able to repurpose and retool, reorient their lives into very dynamic conscious community powered up on zero-point technologies with the most advanced microbiological formulas and frequency technologies in the world today. Circles of conscious birthing and dying. Not that you'll need to die. It is well known in the advanced vanguard science community that if you could stay alive for the next 2 to 3 years, you'll be alive in 500 years if you choose. That is well known. But many people do want to transition, want to pass over. And conscious birthing and conscious dying becomes the integral piece to what we're building in Tennessee and in Bacalar. And we will be franchising this onto the rest of the world as well, incidentally. The technology that we're bringing out, we've got 2 technologies we're releasing this year. Stand by, I believe I've been given a green light on June 21st to announce this. And these technologies are finally the brain, the start of the Life Pod series, which I began talking up 2 years ago. We start to get these out now. And it's very exciting. Again, microbiology and plasma physics or particle physics frequency technology. The NewEarth Pharmacy we just in the process of launching right now. So very exciting stuff. I'll leave it at that.
It's superbly exciting, and it is a wonderful place to finish, because it gives us such hope and it's such excitement. And, you know, I would love to live in one of those places. That's like my wildest dreams come true. I couldn't imagine anything much more beautiful. So thank you so much for all that you are doing, for the tireless work that you are putting in, for the connections that you're making to make this world genuinely a better place. So I don't know if anyone else wants to finish off after that, but thank you so much, Sacha Stone.
My great pleasure. It's wonderful seeing your community. I'm sure some of you I met on the 2 or 3 years ago. I'm certain I must have done that, but very, very grateful for your tribe. Thank you all.